The desert sun blazed mercilessly over the dusty frontier town of Red Rock, its wooden buildings groaning under the heat, the air thick with tension, as a crowd gathered around the corral fence, where an Apache girl sat in chains. She was young, her dark hair braided with strands of leather and beads that caught the light, her doe-like eyes filled with silent defiance though her body sagged from exhaustion, and her tattered buckskin dress clung to her like the last piece of her freedom. No one stepped forward for her, not the ranchers with their wide-brimmed hats and cold stares, not the merchants clutching coin purses at their belts, not even the drifters who usually found interest in anything exotic that might break the monotony of frontier life. To them, she was nothing more than a burden, a reminder of the wars waged against her people, a symbol of danger and mistrust wrapped in beauty that could not save her from prejudice. The sheriff stood tall, his badge gleaming, holding the chain that bound her wrists and ankles, calling for bids in a voice that rang out with authority, but cracked slightly under the heat. No one answered. The girl's gaze lowered to the dust as the people shifted uncomfortably, their silence louder than any insult, their rejection colder than any shackle. A baby cried somewhere in the crowd, a sound raw and human, but it did nothing to stir compassion in the hearts of the onlookers. The Apache girl swallowed her pride, whispering something in her native tongue under her breath, a prayer or perhaps a curse. As her spirit battled the humiliation of being displayed like cattle, she remembered her people, the fire dances under the moon, the stories told by the elders around the flames, the freedom of running barefoot along the river banks, and her heart ached with the knowledge that those days were gone. She thought she had seen the worst when soldiers stormed her village, when her mother's cry was silenced and her father's blood soaked the earth. But this abandonment, this unwanted state of being less than human, cut deeper than any blade. The townsfolk murmured among themselves, debating her fate as though she couldn't hear, as though she wasn't flesh and blood. Too dangerous, one man said. Too wild, muttered another. Not worth the trouble, spat a third. The sheriff, sweating beneath his hat, was about to drag her away when the ground seemed to tremble under the pounding of hooves. Dust rose on the horizon and heads turned toward the sound of riders approaching. A gang of outlaws rode into town like a storm, their leader at the front, tall in the saddle, his long coat whipping in the wind, his face shadowed by a wide-brimmed hat. The people of Red Rock stiffened in fear, for everyone knew the Blackthorn gang, banned respect, even grudging admiration, for he was not just ruthless but clever, not just a criminal but a leader who inspired loyalty in men, hardened by the frontier's merciless hand. Cade dismounted slowly, his boots crunching against the dust, his eyes scanning the crowd before they fell on the girl in shackles. For a moment the town seemed to hold its breath, silence heavier than the desert air, as Outlaw and captive locked eyes. In her gaze, Cade saw not weakness but fire, not submission but the unbroken spirit of a people wronged, and something in him stirred. Something he had buried long ago beneath scars of betrayal and years of bloodshed. He approached, every step deliberate, the townsfolk parting like waves before him, whispers breaking out like sparks. What's she doing in chains? His voice was low but carried, cutting through the crowd, directed at the sheriff, who swallowed nervously before answering. She's Apache, he said, as though that word explained everything. No one wants her. Too dangerous, too wild. Cade's eyes darkened, his jaw tightening, and then with a motion swift as a rattlesnake's strike, he drew his knife, the blade flashing in the sunlight. Before anyone could stop him, he slashed the chains binding the girl's wrists, the iron clattering to the ground, the sound sharp and final like the crack of thunder. The crowd gasped, some recoiling in fear, others in outrage, but no one dared challenge him. Cade crouched, his gaze steady on the girl as he cut the shackles from her ankles, his voice low enough for only her to hear. You don't belong in chains, he said. And for the first time since her capture, she felt the weight of humiliation lift, replaced by something unfamiliar, hope. The sheriff bristled, hand inching toward his revolver. But Cade straightened, his knife still in hand, his gang behind him like wolves ready to strike. You'll let her walk free, Cade declared, his voice steel, his eyes daring anyone to oppose him. The townsfolk stayed silent. The sheriff's hand froze, and the girl rose slowly to her feet, her legs trembling but her spirit unyielding. The baby's cry pierced the silence again, and though it was not hers, the sound felt like a reminder that life could still rise from ashes, that freedom could still be grasped even in the face of despair. Cade turned, offering the girl a hand. not as a captor, not as a savior, but as a man acknowledging her strength. She hesitated, then placed her hand in his, and in that moment, a bond was forged not by chains but by choice, one that would carry them into battles neither could yet imagine. The people of Red Rock watched, stunned. As the outlaw chief led the Apache girl away, her chin lifted high, her dignity reclaimed. Some muttered curses, others whispered prayers, but all knew they had witnessed the beginning of something that would ripple far beyond their dusty streets, for no one had wanted the Apache girl in shackles, until the outlaw chief cut her, chains, and in doing so he altered the course of both their destinies.